I will use some of the guiding questions sent to guide this conversation. One of them was around whether technology is amplifying exclusion or not, and what that means for human rights in the region. And I have this to say: technology is doing both. It's a double-edged sword, just like the word of God. So we are all here in this room because of technology. Why? We received e-communication, whether it was via email, whether it was via WhatsApp, whether someone made a phone call. But I don't think any of us here was invited because Vincent or Ben met us face to face prior. If that happened, it was a coincidence. You were in the same room and there's this thing that was happening and they said, we need to have this person in the room. But otherwise, we are all here because of technology. We are all convened here because of technology, or our use of technology, right? But what about those who would have loved to be in the room but maybe don't have access to technology? There are very many of our comrades within our networks, within our communities, within our institutions who would have loved to be part of this conversation. But because of tech, maybe they don't have access to technology or the internet, or maybe they are not organizing in the same networks that IAVA is organizing. They aren't in this room. So we see how tech can play both roles of inclusion and exclusion. It also means that, for tech, it also means that, especially in this era of sensationalizing content, hey, the word, but okay. In this era where viral content makes the news, we also know that in that way, there could be either inclusion or exclusion. How? Because platforms prioritize viral content. Viral content means more money for them because they are, the more clicks you get, or the more clicks you make, the more they make money out of advertising, out of marketing their products and saying, when you go to the App Store and then you're looking for an app to download or install, it always has that rating of, it's rated maybe 3.7 out of 5 based on this number of people, right? So X, for example, is constantly going to be ranking among the most top 5 social media platforms used because of the millions of people who use X, right? The same goes for other platforms. So in that sense, as viral content happens on social media platforms, this viral content can either lead to misinformation, disinformation, or the sharing of true information. What do I mean? Misinformation, disinformation is the sharing of untrue information or false information. The difference is, with misinformation, false information is shared without the intention to hurt the person for whom this information is created for. Whereas for disinformation, there is a clear intention to harm or to cause hurt, right? And I always say this at spaces such as this, that the Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2023 was a direct result of disinformation. We remember with the first story that broke from the child from Budo who was allegedly assaulted, right? But when a journalist went to actually fight, to dig deeper into the story, they were arrested. So if really this law was brought to protect children from these people who are recruiting them en masse, please recruit me, yes, I want money. The children were not really protected because that boy's story was never told from multiple perspectives. It was only told from the angle of pushing this particular law into force, right? But then we also saw how these conversations in Parliament, outside Parliament, were really front and center of the media. At 7 p.m. during NTV Kaungezi, NBS, it would be the top story during that time, because the media was also complicit in pushing for this story or for this law. And so by the time this was put out in the court of public opinion to say, as Ugandans, judge for yourselves if this community is really dangerous to our children or not. But there were no real facts behind the alleged assaults and recruiting and promotion and whatnot. And I remember very few, actually no mainstream media house came out to tell an unbiased story. Yeah? It was probably Kuchu Times that was doing the heavy lifting then to say, to tell a story from an unbiased perspective. But that's exactly how technology works in terms of exclusion. So in this case, social media platforms and the media were pushing a narrative that was seemingly harmful to children, but without any real facts behind it. So, and then the framing of the law around protection of children was framed in such a way that we can't even question it, right? Because anyone who takes care of young ones wants to protect them, wants the best for them, obviously, right? But then if there are clear disinformation tactics and campaigns, such as what happened with that particular law, then the onus is on the rest of us who are consuming this content to really question who is behind this law and why. And that analogy also translates into technology. Who controls the technology? Who governs it? Who therefore determines what stories get to be told? So we know what algorithms are. Yeah? So algorithms are basically, they are what determine the content that we consume online. So if you're on TikTok constantly and you listen to Shiba's music, they're going to send you Shiba's content, right? Most likely, if you spend a few seconds on a video, on a dance video to Shiba's music, the next 2-3 videos below will be about Shiba's content or Shiba's music. That's because of algorithms. The same way how when we are at such spaces, usually meet new people and you maybe exchange contacts or you talk to each other, right? Before you know it, you've gone to Facebook or Instagram and they're showing you someone you met at this conference and the people you may know, right? So those are the algorithms. They determine what kind of content you consume or engage with. Now, because of algorithms and algorithmic bias, the bias behind the people who develop technology, certain narratives get pushed more than others. So narratives that are, I don't say harmful, but those that generate content or generate money or generate revenue will be pushed more than those that don't. However, this content, this kind of content, if it's put online, doesn't generate as much sensationalism as content that's maybe about two women fighting over a man, for example, right? So then again, it goes back to who has the power to control the narrative, who gets to tick the box about what gets seen and what doesn't. I need to think about that in terms of inclusion or exclusion of particular voices. Then the other thing that technology has done in terms of inclusion or exclusion is around giving the state a lot of power, right? The state has a lot of power in controlling how we use our devices. But realistically, if we all want to move at the same pace of tech, how many of us, of the population in Uganda, can afford the latest phone, the latest smartphone, right? And the latest smartphone is going to have better security features, faster processing, better compatibility with internet, all these things that make our internet experience better and much greater. But it's so out of our price range. It's so out of our price range that you have to think about alternative, cheaper options. So right from that, the state also has power to set up infrastructure for technology. But when you travel out of Kampala and you go outside Kampala, internet connectivity becomes worse. Even non-internet connectivity, just making phone calls, you have to climb a tree, go on top of the mountain to find signal, right? But it's the state's responsibility to ensure that wherever we are able to access connectivity, right? And so the state has power to say only those in central Uganda are going to have maybe 4G internet because 5G is not yet here. It is a lie. Maybe 3G, okay. But the state has that power to decide which kind of infrastructure gets built in which particular geographical location, which is why our siblings in Karamoja region are forever going to be left behind in terms of civic and public discourse that involves technology because they don't have the infrastructure in their area. And none of them are going to build it themselves because it's very expensive, right? And it also needs political will for it to be safer. Infrastructure also includes electricity. because we can't use tech without electricity. You need to charge your phone, you need to charge the Wi-Fi, you need to, I don't know what, yeah? The cameras need batteries, all these things need electricity, which is also concentrated in urban and peri-urban centers. Away from the role of the government in that, there is also the power that the state wields in terms of digital surveillance. As we are doing our advocacy, we are saying, oh, we are preaching the gospel of inclusion. We are saying love is love. Human rights matter. Women's rights are human rights, and all that stuff. The state is watching. It's listening, and it is figuring out a way to further curb, which is also how the sovereignty bill came in power. It was about surveillance, digital surveillance of each of our financial transactions. They looked through, Bank of Uganda looked through and said, these people have a lot of money. It is enabling them to organize. We need to curb on this power. So let's draft the sovereignty bill, right? But prior to that, we had seen signs. Which signs? Different organizations' bank accounts were being frozen. Yeah, starting with Action Aid, all the way back in 2021, I think. Yeah, Action Aid and that whole list of like 20 organizations that lost access to their money. And then it came to this recent list during like end of last year or something. Election period, yes, where there's that other new list of other NGOs. All that is because of the power the state has to do digital surveillance. So digital surveillance isn't just about the social media platforms and the advocacy we are doing there. It's also about how money moves and who determines which money moves where. Yeah, and how. Which is why when you're filling in a form to receive money, you have all these things of, you have to put the SWIFT, you have to put the what, the country of origin, intermediary bank, whatever it is, because someone determines how that money moves and at what speed it moves. RTGS, SWIFT, what, internal bank transfer, all those things are all about digital surveillance. But the state has the power to do this kind of surveillance en masse. So I might surveil my own bank account or maybe my partner's bank account, but the government can surveil all 50 million of us at the same time. And that's the power they have in terms of inclusion or exclusion. And so they are now seeing that the work that CSOs are doing is impactful in terms of moving the point of mindset change, attitude change, etc.
So the question was, after all this, really it's a lot. But then I've been wondering, what do we do? What should we do?
Mine is a simple one, but as faith leaders or as people who are doing this work, how do we use tech, better this work? Because the security threat is high. Whatever you post, whatever you talk about, they can find you when they wish to. So how strategically can we use tech? Because, like you mentioned when you were starting, we are all in this room because of tech. So now how do we take this information out there to those who are not in this room? But also looking at our infrastructure as a country, is tech limiting in a way that I always tell people that you can drive just 20 miles from Kampala and you don't have network. So then how do we cope with that? Because tech is here to stay. We need to use it, but how do we use it strategically so that we don't endanger lives, but also so that we can keep doing this work? Thank you.
From your presentation, I gathered that technology is supposed to be neutral, yet it's not. So aspects of inequalities are being coded within the technological platforms or digital platforms to be normal. So, and we need to use these platforms for advancing human rights, for our work, So again, it's very challenging to now figure out how then do we ensure that we still continue using the platforms, but at the same time, we are able to flag out human rights violations and discriminations or biases within these platforms, and be able to apply strategies that we can address on matters technology facilitated GBV.
Thank you. I'm very lucky that all the three questions asked are similar, so I can give one answer. But it goes back to what I said in my introduction. This is on all of us as users of technology. All of us. You see how Ugandans rallied behind against the sovereignty bill? Because each and every one of us felt its impending impact on our lives, right? So as tech users, we need to unionize, for lack of a better word, against the big corporations. Why? Because our power lies in the numbers. Without the numbers, they are nothing. Our power lies in the numbers. A few years ago, I think a decade or so ago, tech platforms, social media platforms did not have security and privacy features like they do now. For example, mute, report, block, those things weren't there. But the end users, ourselves, us, we said no. X needs a report button. It needs a mute button. Facebook needs a mute button. WhatsApp needs a button that says disappearing messages, because I don't want this person to have my information forever, right? So it came from us. Those things are wins because we pushed back and said no. If I post something on Facebook, I want to be able to edit it. If I send a message to someone on WhatsApp, I want to be able to edit it. Even if they have read it, I want to edit it. So all those wins have been as a result of us using our power, which is the numbers, and our voices to push back and agitate for these things. So you mentioned TFGBV, which is quite broad in its sense. And my response to that again goes back to us. Let's not be bystanders in the face of violence. Why? Because the online space reflects what is offline. Offline, people are very violent. Very, very violent. Physically, emotionally, financially, when it comes to our communities, even our identity gets insulted, right? So because what happens offline is a reflection of what happens online, we need to do better. Because we are the ones who make up the online space. So for example, if I'm violent offline, and online I'm preaching togetherness and love, that is just a facade. That's just a facade. Because tomorrow, when someone who I perceive to be different from me posts something, my real face is going to come out. And I'll be really homophobic or very, transphobic or very hurtful towards them. Because at the core, that's who we are as human beings. Yeah? So we need to do better as the users of technology. Don't be a bystander. When someone is facing violence, speak up for them. Or if you can't speak up for them, don't amplify the violence further. So for example, if someone is being body shamed online, then you take a screenshot of all the comments and bring to your WhatsApp group to say, have you seen what is happening to Sandra here? On X? Come and see. You're amplifying this violence even across platforms. So don't be a bystander to say, this thing doesn't concern me, because trust me, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before it comes knocking at your doorstep, right? So the onus is on us. We are the ones to do that work. We are the ones who need to change how the online space looks if we want a better and safe space for everyone. In terms of the earlier two questions about what next. So this is the reality, but what next? Again, it's upon us. So it goes back to us. We know what the problem is. What are we doing within our niche to change that? As maybe religious leaders or faith-based leaders, your power is the microphone you hold in your hand. Because every time a pastor, a reverend, a sheikh gets up on the pulpit and says something, people listen. So your power lies in the microphone. How about we preach love, and non-discrimination as opposed to furthering the divide. And this also happens online because everything offline actually happens online.
As a tech, literate person, someone who uses information, the government of Uganda, you all heard about it. They got our data and sold it to US. Sijui, they wanted to train the AI models and they used the data of Ugandans, to train their AI models. They are doing a lot of, work, health, vaccines and all that. But now, what strikes my mind, does it mean that if I'm a Ugandan, the Ugandan government has powers over me, that they can share my information without my consent? Where do these companies come from? Let me say tech, Airtel, whatever, the telecom companies. To what extent are we supposed to be involved? Or how are we protected? That they can just get, because now they are going to get their dollars, and everything, your digital footprint, is shared with Meta, with Gilead, something like that. Probably they might have a good cause. You want to train AI models and all that in health, but to what extent?
Our data is very valuable, but as end users of technology, we usually disembody ourselves from data. What do I mean? When someone talks about data, you imagine it is this collection of numbers and I don't know, texts somewhere there that doesn't concern you. But it is you. Every click you make online is you. Every post of yourself you post online, it is you. Every time you interact with ChatGPT or DeepSeek or whoever or Grok, it is you. You're the one who is doing that work. But who is benefiting? Big tech. And then, I think ChatGPT, actually most of these AI generative models, initially they used to be free. But now there's a limit, and then you would have to pay to access your own data. So it goes back to the rest of us. Most times, this work is left to tech activists like Her Internet and myself. But it touches on all of us. And the same goes for what the discussions around politics. And people say, oh, I don't engage in politics because it doesn't concern me. Honey, it concerns you. It is you. You're the politics. As you're saying, it doesn't concern me. You're the one being discussed and dissected at the table. Right? So it becomes a case for all of us. Again, it goes back to how can we all in our different roles and immediate circles of influence work towards reducing this discrimination and inequality, and that are being sold to third parties that we even have no contracts with. As faith-based leaders, when you go on the microphone and talk, don't just talk about how gay people are bad. Talk about how data is being sold. Talk about how AI models are being trained on our data that we can't even access anymore. But because we disembody ourselves, we see ourselves as not part of the problem. And so we are unable to properly agitate for this protection mechanism. So all these things are connected. By the time big tech comes in for AI models to be trained on our data, someone in America has already made the decision and seen the vision of where they want to get. We haven't yet thought about how our data is actually going to be sold. Because whether you're being treated in a private hospital or a public hospital, all that data gets fed to Ministry of Health. And unfortunately, we can't decide when or not to go through. Unfortunately, we can't decide when or not to go through. But because we disembody ourselves from all these processes, sometimes data is like, I think it is those people, not me. It is us. It is all of us. So the whole point goes back to all of us, the power of collaboration, and how we can have all hands on deck in the fight against digital impunity.
My question is, are there any laws that can protect, especially technology-facilitated violence, the impunity that you're speaking about? Is there any hope, or we should all just all go back to sending pigeons and smoke signals?
Unfortunately, our laws are not catching up as fast as technology is moving. The Computer Misuse Act, obviously for Uganda's sake, like any other law since, I think, 1995, has been political. It's politically motivated. to exclude some voices, to silence some voices and whatnot. But because there are other laws like the AHAT attacking the gays, people don't think about these other laws. Eh? We are so focused on the bandwagon and sensationalizing other things that we don't think about how all these laws are connected, right? So it goes back to all of us as legal practitioners, as health service providers, faith-based leaders, cultural leaders, people in the media. What are we doing within our niche? Because tech is the unifying factor. Everything we want to do happens on tech platforms. But high internet can't be the only one talking about these things, for example. So we need to engage in those spaces. I think the legal panel was talking about how we are going to draft an AI policy or something. And I remember Chris Bariomunsi talked about it actually at one of his international visits and whatever that he was doing in India at the AI summit. And we all laughed it off like it was banter. We said, that is our Chris. As usual, he's just talking about that he doesn't know about. But these things are coming. But we should have started engaging like 2 years ago with the AI policy. So it all goes back to what role we can all play and all of us in small or big ways can do something to end this digital impunity, for lack of a better word.